The ship was enormous. It stretched across the darkness of space like a silver whale, its metal skin catching the light of distant stars. The horizon's edge was the pride of the Galactic Coalition, home to 12 different species working together in an uneasy peace. And today, it was getting a new passenger. Lieutenant Park stood at the docking bay with a single bag over her shoulder. She was small, barely reaching the chest of most aliens around her. Her black hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her uniform looked slightly too big for her thin frame. She carried an old leather journal in one hand and a basic in the other. The aliens walking past her did not hide their stares. A group of officers, tall beings with blue skin and 4 arms, whispered to each other as they passed. Their language was full of clicking sounds, but caught one word she recognized. It meant child in their tongue. She did not react, she simply waited. Captain arrived moments later. He was a broad-shouldered man in his 50s, his hair showing at the temples. When he saw, his serious face broke into a rare smile. "Lieutenant Park," he said, extending his hand, "I cannot tell you how glad I am that command sent you." Shook his hand. Her grip was surprisingly firm. "Thank you, Captain. I hope I can be useful." Leaned closer and lowered his voice. "They have no idea who you are. Command thought it best to keep your file." "I prefer it that way," said softly. They walked together through the winding corridors of the ship. Everywhere looked, she saw alien species going about their work. They were easy to spot. They were large, muscular beings covered in thick brown hide, with faces that looked like they were carved from stone. They valued strength above all things and wore their battle scars with pride. One in particular blocked their path. He was massive, even by his species standards, and the weapons strapped to his body could have equipped a small army. His name was, and he was the ship's weapons officer. "Captain," said, his voice deep like rolling thunder, "this is the military expert Earth promised us." He looked down at with barely hidden disgust. "She looks like she has never seen a real battle." Met his gaze calmly. "Appearances can be misleading." Laughed. It was not a kind sound. "Humans always talk big. Let us hope you can hide behind that talk when they come for us." He pushed past them, his heavy footsteps echoing down the corridor. Captain's jaw tightened but placed a gentle hand on his arm. "It is fine," she said. "I am used to it." They continued to the bridge, where Commander waited. And as the ship's second-in-command, he carried himself with obvious authority. His 4 hands were always moving, tapping on screens, adjusting controls, never still. "Ah," the human liaison said. His tone was polite but cold. "Welcome aboard, Lieutenant. I trust you understand the importance of this mission. We are heading to the neutral zone to negotiate with the Empire. One mistake could start a war that would kill billions." "I understand," said. Studied her for a long moment. "Earth is still new to the Coalition. Your species joined only 30 years ago. The rest of us have been traveling between stars for thousands of years. I hope you will watch and learn during this mission, rather than trying to prove yourself." It was an insult wrapped in polite words. Simply nodded. "I am here to serve the mission, Commander, nothing more." Seemed satisfied. He turned back to his work, dismissing her without another word. Captain led to her quarters. The room was small but clean, with a single window looking out at the stars. Set her bag down and sat on the edge of the narrow bed. "You do not have to take this," said quietly. "I could speak to them. Let them know what you have done for humanity, for all of us." Shook her head. "No, my work is best done in shadows, Captain. The moment people know what I am capable of, I become useless." She opened her leather journal, its pages filled with handwritten notes in Korean. "Let them think I am just a young officer with no experience. It is easier that way." Hesitated at the door. "They are dangerous, more dangerous than the Coalition understands. If negotiations fail, then we will deal with what comes." Looked up at him, and for just a moment something flickered in her gentle eyes, something old and sharp. I have dealt with worse. After he left, sat alone in the silence. She pulled out a small photograph from her journal. It showed a younger version of herself standing with a group of soldiers. Most of their faces had been crossed out with black ink. Dead. All of them dead now, from missions nobody would ever know about. She touched the photograph gently, then put it away. The ship hummed around her as it prepared to leave orbit. Through the window, she watched Earth grow smaller and smaller until it was just another point of light among millions. She had left home many times before, never knowing if she would return. In the corridor outside, she could hear soldiers laughing about the tiny human who had joined them. Someone made a joke about keeping her in a safe place during any fighting. The laughter grew louder. Lay back on her bed and closed her eyes. She thought about the missions that had shaped her, the blood she had spilled, the lives she had saved, the enemies who still whispered her code name in fear, never knowing the face behind it. The gardener. She had earned that name not by killing, but by planting seeds, ideas, strategies, small actions that grew into massive changes. She had ended wars before they started, toppled empires without firing a shot, and walked through the most dangerous places in the galaxy with nothing but her mind as a weapon. And now she was here, surrounded by aliens who saw her as weak, inexperienced, useless. That was good. That was how she liked it. The ship jumped to hyperspace and drifted into a light sleep. In her dreams, she walked through a garden full of flowers she had never planted. Each one represented a life she had touched, a disaster she had prevented. The garden stretched on forever. When she woke, the real work would begin, but for now she rested. They thought she was unseasoned. 3 days passed in the cold quiet of space. Kept to herself, eating meals alone in her quarters, studying star maps and writing in her journal. The alien crew continued to ignore her, which suited her perfectly. She spent her nights walking the empty corridors, memorizing every turn, every door, every escape route. Old habits never died. On the 4th morning, the ship's alarm screamed to life. Was already awake. She had felt the slight change in the ship's vibration 10 minutes before the alarm sounded. Something was wrong with the engines, but as she listened to the announcement over the speakers, she learned it was something else entirely. A distress signal, a damaged cargo vessel drifting in nearby space. She made her way to the bridge, where Commander was already barking orders. Captain stood nearby, his face troubled. The vessel identifies itself as a coalition trader, explained to the gathered officers. Their engines failed. They are requesting immediate assistance. Cracked his massive knuckles. Could be a trap. They are known for such tricks. We cannot ignore a distress call, said firmly. Coalition law demands we respond. I will lead a boarding party to assess the situation. Stepped forward. I would like to join the boarding party. The room went silent, let out a harsh laugh. You, what will you do, little human? Read them poetry until they surrender. Several officers chuckled, even looked amused. I have training in emergency response, said calmly. I may be useful. Commander waved his hand dismissively. Very well. Stay behind the real soldiers and try not to get in the way. The boarding party consisted of 12 members, 8 warriors, 2 officers, commander, and they crossed to the damaged vessel in a small shuttle, the broken ship growing larger in their view until it filled the entire window. Something felt wrong to the moment they docked. The air inside the vessel was slightly off, not enough to trigger alarms, but enough to notice if you knew what to look for. She had smelled this particular chemical mixture before, years ago, in territory. They were walking into a trap. She activated her private communication channel to Captain. Sir, she whispered, this is an ambush. Infiltrators. I estimate 20 to 30 hostiles hiding in the cargo holds. There was a pause, then his voice came back tight with tension. Are you certain? Yes. I trust you. What do you need? Keep the shuttle ready for emergency extraction. And Captain, whatever happens in the next few minutes, please keep recording." The boarding party moved deeper into the vessel. The cargo holds were dark and empty, too empty. A ship this size should have been full of goods. Instead, there was nothing but shadows. Walked at the front, his massive weapon ready. "I see nothing," he growled. "Perhaps the little human is jumping at ghosts." That was when the walls opened. Hidden panels slid apart and soldiers poured out. They were tall, thin beings with pale skin and eyes that glowed red in the darkness. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. Commander shouted orders, but his voice was swallowed by the chaos. The warriors fought bravely, but they were caught off guard and outnumbered. Swung his weapon wildly, but it jammed after the first shot. He roared in frustration. Moved. To the aliens watching, it was like seeing water flow through cracks in stone. She was everywhere and nowhere, sliding between enemy soldiers like a ghost. Her hands struck with perfect precision, hitting nerve points that most species did not even know they had. One dropped, then another, then three more. She did not kill, she did not need to. A soldier aimed at Commander from behind. Was there before he could fire, twisting his arm and sending his shot into the ceiling. A quick strike to his throat and he collapsed, gasping but alive. Nearby, a young ensign lay wounded on the ground, standing over him with a blade raised. Crossed the distance in 3 steps. She caught the blade with her bare hand, blood dripping from her palm, and drove her elbow into his chest. He flew backward into the wall and did not get up. 90 seconds, that was all it took. When the chaos settled, 7 soldiers lay unconscious on the floor. The rest had retreated into the depths of the ship, unwilling to face whatever demon had just torn through their ambush. Stood in the center of the room, breathing evenly. Her hand was bleeding, but she did not seem to notice. Her face was calm, almost peaceful. The alien stared at her. Commander found his voice first. What are you?" Walked over to the wounded ensign and knelt beside him. She pulled out a small medical kit from her belt and began treating his injuries with gentle hands. "I am Lieutenant Park," she said simply, "Earth's military liaison." "That is not what I mean," pressed. "Who trained you? What unit? What rank do you really hold?" Finished bandaging the ensign's wound and helped him to his feet. "Lieutenant," she repeated, "Earth does not inflate titles." Stood frozen, his jammed weapon still in his hands. For the first time since they met, he looked at with something other than contempt. It might have been fear, it might have been respect, probably both. They evacuated back to the horizon's edge. The damaged vessel was destroyed remotely to prevent them from salvaging it. In the medical bay, doctors treated the wounded while officers gathered to discuss what had happened. Lieutenant Lee found sitting alone in a quiet corner of the ship. He was young, barely 25, with a kind face and curious eyes. As the ship's communications officer, he had heard things, rumors, whispers that traveled through classified channels. "The gardener," he said softly, sitting down beside her. Did not look at him. "I do not know what you mean." "There are stories," continued. "A ghost operative who ended 3 galactic invasions without anyone ever seeing her face. They call her the gardener because she plants seeds that grow into peace." He paused. "That is you, is it not?" Finally turned to face him. Her eyes were tired but kind. "Stories are just stories, Lieutenant, nothing more." Nodded slowly. He did not believe her, but he understood that some truths needed to stay hidden. "If you ever need help," he said, "I am good at keeping secrets." For the first time since boarding the ship, smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but it was real. "Thank you, I will remember that." That night the ship was quiet, but in every corridor, in every room, aliens whispered about the tiny human who had moved like death itself. They did not know her full story. They did not know about the 3 invasions. But they were beginning to understand that Park was not what she appeared to be. and somewhere in the darkness of space, a message was being sent to the Empire. The gardener was awake. The diplomatic mission continued, but the mood on the ship had changed. Aliens who had once ignored now watched her from the corners of their eyes. They did not speak to her directly, but she could hear them talking when they thought she was not listening. She moved faster than any warrior I have ever seen. Did you see her catch that blade with her bare hand? She did not even flinch. Who is she really? Earth is hiding something. Ignored the whispers. She had work to do. In the ship's communication center, a holographic council meeting was taking place. Representatives from all 12 coalition species appeared as shimmering blue images, their faces serious. The topic was simple: the ambush. Someone had given them information about the ship's location. There was a spy aboard the horizon's edge. But that discussion stopped when a new figure appeared in the holographic display. He was tall even for his skin marked with ritual scars, his red eyes burning with cold intelligence. Emperor himself had joined the meeting. "I want to assure the coalition," said, his voice smooth like oil on water, "that the attack on your vessel was not sanctioned by the Empire. Those soldiers were rebels acting without authority. We are investigating the matter." Nobody believed him, but politics demanded polite lies. Stood at the back of the room, watching quietly. She studied his face, his movements, the small tells that most people would miss. She had spent months learning to read body language years ago, during a mission she was not supposed to have survived. And then's eyes found her. For just a moment, less than a second, his composure cracked. His red eyes widened. His hands, hidden from the camera, trembled slightly. Saw recognition flash across his face like lightning. He knew who she was. Quickly looked away, continuing his smooth speech about peace and cooperation, but had seen enough. The Emperor was afraid of her. After the meeting ended, sent a private, encrypted message to his generals. Even though could not hear it, she could guess what it said. In war, when you see fear in your enemy's eyes, you know they are about to do something desperate. The following days were tense. The ship's security teams searched for the spy but found nothing. Knew they were looking in the wrong places. Whoever the traitor was, they were smart enough to hide their tracks. She decided to find them herself. Ensign was a young engineer from Earth. She was nervous and quiet, with thick glasses and fingers that were always stained with machine oil. Most of the alien crew ignored her even more than they ignored, but had noticed something important, was brilliant. "You found something," said, sitting down next to in the engineering bay. It was not a question. Jumped in surprise, nearly dropping her. "Lieutenant Park, I did not hear you come in." "That was on purpose," smiled gently. "Tell me what you found." Hesitated, looking around to make sure they were alone. "The navigation computer," she whispered. "Someone has been accessing it with false codes. They have been sending our position data to an outside source for weeks. I traced the signal, but—" She paused, her face pale. "The signal goes to space." "Do you know who is responsible?" "Not yet, but I can find out. I just need more time." Placed a hand on shoulder. "You are doing excellent work, Ensign, but be careful. Whoever this traitor is, they will not hesitate to kill you if they think you are close to the truth." Swallowed hard. "How do you stay so calm? Are you not afraid?" Considered the question. "Fear is just information," she said softly. "It tells you what matters. It shows you what you need to protect. The trick is to listen to the fear, understand it, and then choose your action anyway." Nodded slowly. Something in her eyes changed. She looked a little less afraid and a little more determined. Together they worked through the night, provided guidance while did the technical work, digging through layers of encrypted data. By morning, they had their answer. The traitor was an officer, one of its most trusted soldiers. He had served the coalition for over 20 years, but his had been threatened by the decades ago, and secret communications revealed that he had made a deal. Deliver the horizon's edge to the enemy and they would spare his people. It was a betrayal born from fear, not evil. Almost felt sorry for him. They brought the evidence to Captain and Commander. The arrest was planned for that evening, quiet and clean, but must have sensed something was wrong. Before the security teams could reach him, barricaded himself in the ship's control room. Alarms screamed. Lights flickered. His voice came through the speakers, desperate and broken. I had no choice. That would have destroyed everything I loved. You cannot judge me for wanting to protect my family. Stood outside the control room, his face twisted with rage and hurt. Had been his friend, his brother in battle. Let me in there, he growled. I will tear him apart with my bare hands. No, said calmly. He has access to the ship's main systems. If we attack, he could destroy us all. Then what do we do? Commander demanded. Watched the door to the control room, her mind working through dozens of possibilities. We wait, and we listen. Desperate people make mistakes when they think nobody is paying attention. They did not have to wait long. Triggered a ship-wide system failure, causing engines to stall and weapons to go offline. But that was not the worst part. With his final act of betrayal, he sent one last transmission into space. Their exact coordinates, their current status, everything they would need. Felt the change in the ship's sensors before anyone announced it. A cold weight settled in her stomach, an old familiar feeling. War was coming. Through the bridge's main window they saw it happen. The darkness of space rippled and tore as ships emerged from hyperspace. 1, 5, 10, 20. 40 warships surrounded them, their weapons glowing with deadly light. Commander stared at the fleet in horror. There are too many, we cannot fight this. Loaded a fresh weapon, his earlier rage replaced by cold acceptance. Then we die with honor. Captain looked at. In his eyes there was something no one else could see. Hope. Lieutenant Park, he said quietly, do you have any ideas? Studied the enemy fleet. 40 ships, thousands of soldiers, enough firepower to destroy a small planet. Against that, they had one damaged vessel and a crew that had already lost hope. She thought about the 3 invasions she had stopped, the Swarm, the Civil War, this first expansion. Each one had seemed impossible until she found the cracks, the weaknesses, the small seeds that could grow into victory. There were always cracks if you knew where to look. Yes, said softly, I have an idea. She walked toward the bridge, her steps calm and steady. The bridge was filled with panic. Officers shouted at each other in half a dozen alien languages. Screens flashed red with warnings. Outside the windows, 40 warships held their position, their weapons aimed and ready. Commander ran calculations on his display, all 4 hands working at once. 0%, he muttered. Our survival odds are 0%. Even if we surrender, they will likely kill us to send a message. Stood at the weapons station, his face carved from stone. My people do not surrender. We fight until the last breath. Fighting is suicide, an officer argued. We need to negotiate. Negotiate with what? Another shouted. We have nothing they want. Through all the chaos, walked calmly to the center of the bridge. She moved like she was taking a peaceful morning walk, not standing in the middle of a crisis that could kill everyone aboard. Captain, she said, her voice somehow cutting through the noise. Please open a communication channel to the flagship. The room went silent. Commander stared at her. What do you think you are doing, Lieutenant? This is not the time for whatever games you are playing. No games, said. I am going to end this. You let out a bitter laugh, though there was less mockery in it than before. What can one small human do against an entire fleet? Turned to face him. For the first time since she boarded the ship, she let the mask fall. Her eyes, which had always seemed gentle and tired, now burned with something ancient and fierce. The exhausted young officer was gone. In her place stood something else entirely. I stopped the swarm in 2329, she said quietly. 2 billion soldiers in a hive mind that had consumed 3-star systems. I spent 2 years living among them, learning their language, their thoughts, their deepest fears. When I finally left, I planted a single philosophical question in their collective consciousness. It broke their will to conquer. They retreated to their home space and have not attacked anyone since. She paused. They still send me poetry. The bridge was completely silent now. The Civil War in 2334 continued. 7 factions fighting each other, threatening to spill into coalition territory. I served as a hidden mediator, playing each side against the others until the only path left was peace. She looked at your weapons officer, the city where your parents lived. It still exists because of what I did. His face went pale beneath his tough hide. And this first expansion wave in 2341. Their primary fleet was supposed to hit 8 coalition worlds in a coordinated strike. Instead, their navigation data was corrupted. They blamed system errors. It was not errors. His voice was soft but sharp as a blade. I spent 11 months behind enemy lines, alone, without support, without weapons. I walked through the heart of the Empire and I tore their plans apart piece by piece. They never knew I was there. Captain stood beside her, a faint smile on his lips. He had known. He had always known. They called me the gardener, said, because I do not destroy my enemies. I plant seeds, ideas, doubts, strategies that grow slowly until my enemies defeat themselves. They have been searching for me for years. They have killed dozens of people they thought might be me. Her eyes found the main where the fleet waited. And now I am going to speak to their emperor directly. Commander opened his mouth to protest, but Captain held up his hand. Open the channel. The communication officer, Lee, worked his controls with shaking hands. Moments later, the flickered and Emperor appeared. He looked confident at first, sitting on his throne of black metal, surrounded by his generals. But when his red eyes found standing at the center of the bridge, his confidence cracked like thin ice. You, he breathed, you should be dead. We hunted you for years. Smiled, it was not a kind smile. You should have looked harder. We sent assassins. We burned entire space stations trying to find you. We tortured prisoners who might have known your identity. Leaned forward, his voice shaking with old rage. How are you still alive? Because I am better than you, said simply. I have always been better than you. The Emperor's face twisted with fury. You are one human on a crippled ship surrounded by my fleet. You have nothing. You are nothing. Am I? Tilted her head slightly. Do you remember the cargo vessel where your ambush failed? The soldiers who attacked us were not killed. They were disabled. I made sure of that. She paused to let her words sink in. I made sure of that because I needed them alive. Specifically, I needed their communication implants intact. A flicker of uncertainty crossed face. While I was aboard that vessel, I planted a dormant virus in every implant I could reach. Your soldiers carried it back to your fleet when they retreated. By now, it has spread to every ship in your armada. His voice was calm, almost casual. With a single command, I can activate that virus. It will not harm your soldiers. It will do something much worse. She stepped closer to the screen. It will broadcast the position of every ship in your fleet to every coalition world, every coalition ship, and every news network in the galaxy. Every secret movement you have planned for the next decade will be exposed. Every hidden base, every supply line, every assassination target. Her eyes locked onto us. You can destroy this ship, Emperor. You can kill everyone aboard. But if you do, your entire empire loses its greatest advantage, secrecy. The bridge was silent. Even the alien officers had stopped breathing. Stared at her for a long moment. His generals whispered urgently to each other. She could see them running calculations, considering options, realizing the trap she had built around them. You are bluffing, said, but his voice lacked conviction. Am I? Smiled again. You have studied the gardener's methods for years. In all that time, have you ever known me to bluff? The silence stretched on. Captain stepped forward. Emperor, Lieutenant Park has offered you a choice. Your fleet can withdraw and we can continue diplomatic discussions through proper channels. Or you can attack, win this small battle and lose everything else. His hands gripped the arms of his throne so hard that the metal bent. His generals continued arguing in rapid, their voices rising in panic. Finally, the emperor raised his hand for silence. "This is not over, Gardener," he said, his voice cold with hate. "One day I will find a way to kill you." "Many have tried," replied. "I am still here, they are not." The communication channel closed. For one terrible moment nothing happened. The fleet remained in position, weapons still glowing. Then one by one the ships began to turn. Their engines flared. The darkness of space rippled again as they jumped to hyperspace, disappearing like ghosts fleeing the dawn. Within minutes the fleet was gone. The bridge erupted in cheers. Officers who had been ready to die moments ago were now hugging each other, crying, laughing with relief. But did not celebrate. She stood alone at the center of the bridge, her shoulders slightly slumped, her eyes tired again. The mask was back in place. Commander approached her slowly. He stopped in front of her and, to everyone's surprise, bowed deeply in the style of highest respect. "Lieutenant Park," he said quietly, "I apologize for every doubt I ever held." Was next. The massive warrior knelt before her, something his species only did for the greatest heroes of legend. "You saved my," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I owe you a debt I can never repay." Looked at them both with gentle eyes. "Please stand, both of you. I do not need bows or kneeling. I just need this crew to work together. We are not safe yet." She walked off the bridge without another word, leaving a shipful of aliens staring after her in wonder. The gardener had won again. But she knew this was not the end. It was never the end. There would always be another threat, another impossible situation, another garden that needed tending. For now, though, she allowed herself one small moment of peace. She had saved them. That was enough. In the days that followed, the horizon's edge limped back toward Coalition space. The engines were damaged, life support was running at half capacity, and the crew was exhausted. But they were alive. Against all odds, they were alive. Word spread quickly through the ship, then through the Coalition, and eventually through the entire galaxy. The story of how one human woman had faced down the Emperor and made his entire fleet retreat became legend. News broadcasts replayed the confrontation. Military academies began studying her tactics. Children on distant worlds played games where they pretended to be the gardener. Hated every moment of it. She stayed in her quarters as much as possible, avoiding the grateful looks and the whispered praise. When she had to walk through the corridors, she kept her head down and moved quickly. Fame was the enemy of her work. The more people knew her face, the harder it would be to disappear into the shadows where she belonged. A formal ceremony was held in the ship's main hall. Representatives from all 12 coalition species gathered to honor those who had served during the crisis. Commander stood at the front, his 4 hands clasped behind his back, his posture more humble than had ever seen. "I want to begin with an apology," said, his voice carrying across the silent room. "When Lieutenant Park first boarded this ship, I dismissed her. I assumed that because she was human, because she was young, because she was quiet, she had nothing to offer." He paused. "I was a fool, and I suspect I am not the only one." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. "The humans have been coalition members for only 30 years. We have treated them as children playing at the adults' table, but this mission has shown me something important. Look directly at. Humanity has been protecting us in ways we never knew, fighting battles we never saw, winning wars we never realized were being fought." He bowed his head. "Lieutenant Park, on behalf of the coalition, I thank you." The room erupted in applause, stood awkwardly, wishing she could sink through the floor. When it was her turn to speak, she kept it simple. "I did not do this alone. Ensign discovered the traitor and saved us all. She should receive the highest commendation." standing in the crowd, turned bright red, and Lieutenant Lee kept communications running during the crisis. Without him, my plan would have failed. He deserves recognition. Smiled and nodded gratefully. Looked across the room at all the faces watching her. Aliens who had mocked her. Aliens who had ignored her. Aliens who now looked at her like she was some kind of miracle. I am not a hero, she said quietly. I am just someone who pays attention, someone who plants seeds and waits for them to grow. Any of you could do what I do if you were willing to be patient, to stay quiet, to let others take the credit. She smiled slightly. That is the secret. There is no secret, just hard work and patience. After the ceremony, Captain found on the observation deck, staring out at the stars. You are uncomfortable with all this, he said, standing beside her. Very. Would it help if I told you that Earth Command wants to give you the highest military honor our planet has ever created? Groaned, please tell them no. Laughed softly. I already did. They were not happy, but I explained that the best way to honor you was to let you remain in the shadows. He paused. Though I suspect that will be difficult now. Everyone knows your face. Then I will grow old and change my appearance and start again, turn to face him. I have done it before. I will do it again. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching distant stars drift past. Why do you keep doing this? Finally asked. You could retire, live peacefully somewhere. You have saved the galaxy 3 times over. No one would blame you for resting. Considered the question. Do you know why they call me the gardener? Because you plant seeds, ideas, strategies that grow. That is part of it. His voice grew soft. But there is another reason. A gardener does not grow flowers for themselves. They grow flowers for everyone who walks through the garden, for the people who will never know their name, who will never thank them, who will simply enjoy the beauty without understanding the work that made it possible. She looked back at the stars. That is what I do. I protect people who will never know I exist. I stop wars before they start. I plant peace in places where only violence has grown before. And you expect nothing in return. Shook her head. A garden does not thank the gardener, and the gardener does not expect thanks. They do the work because the work needs to be done, she smiled. That is enough for me. 6 months later, was back on Earth. She had bought a small house outside Seoul, surrounded by hills and forests. Behind the house she had built a garden. Real flowers this time. Roses and lilies and chrysanthemums, growing in neat rows under the warm sun. Visited often. The young engineer had been promoted twice since the mission and was now working on the most advanced ships in Earth's fleet. She always brought small gifts, packets of seeds from alien worlds, strange flowers that had never seen before. I tried to plant the one from the, said one afternoon, kneeling in the dirt beside, but it keeps dying. I think I am doing something wrong. You are too eager, said gently. These flowers need time to adjust to new soil. You have to introduce them slowly, let them adapt. Pushing too hard kills them. Nodded thoughtfully. That sounds like advice for more than just gardening. Smiled but said nothing. Sent messages regularly. He had been posted to a new ship, exploring the edges of known space. His letters were full of wonder at the strange things he had seen. Sometimes he asked for advice on difficult situations. Always answered, though she never told him what to do. She only asked questions that helped him find his own answers. Even had written once. The message was short and awkward, full of misspelled words and clumsy grammar, but hidden in the rough language was something genuine. I teach young warriors now, he wrote. I tell them about you, not the legend, the real person. I tell them that true strength is not about how hard you can hit. It is about knowing when to hit and when to walk away. You taught me that. Read the message 3 times before saving it. One evening, as the sun set behind the mountains and painted the sky in shades of orange and gold, sat in her garden with a cup of tea. Her hands were dirty from a day of work. Her back ached slightly. She felt older than she had in years. It was peaceful. She let herself enjoy it. Then her buzzed. She looked at the screen. The message was from Earth Command, marked urgent. Something was brewing at the edge of the galaxy, a new threat that nobody understood yet. They needed someone who could investigate quietly, who could plant seeds in dangerous places, who could stop a war before it started. They needed the gardener. Sighed and set down her tea. She looked at her flowers blooming beautifully in the fading light. She had hoped for more time. She always hoped for more time. But the garden never stopped needing tending. There was always another flower to plant, another weed to pull, another storm to prepare for. She stood up and walked inside to pack her worn duffel bag. They would underestimate her again. They always did. The new enemy she faced would see a small, quiet woman and think she was harmless. They would laugh at her gentle appearance and soft voice. They would assume she was inexperienced. And just like every time before, they would be wrong. Because Park was the gardener, and she had been protecting the galaxy since before most of them were born. She finished packing and stepped outside one last time. The stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Somewhere out there, among those distant lights, someone needed her help. She smiled and walked toward the transport waiting to take her away. The garden would still be here when she returned. It always was. And until that day, she would do what she had always done. She would plant seeds. She would grow peace. She would save people who would never know her name. Because that was what gardeners did. It was time for the gardener to plant one more seed. They had no idea.